Whelan.
Thanks very much, Cathaoirleach. I want to put on the record, I appreciate Minister Shadow coming in here to the House personally. I realise that he has a great deal of responsibility on his plate, and I think it's very important that he is here to hear our concerns and our views firsthand. I also think the House has to be grateful to the Minister for what has been a very thorough and comprehensive response to the motion. However, there are remaining fears, and they're not groundless, and they are genuine, and I think it's important that the Minister hears them from us and perhaps takes them into account as future policy is developed and implemented. It has been well rehearsed that the problems that we find ourselves in are due to the recklessness of the previous government. But just because we inherited their problems, I don't think that means it follows that we should inherit or adopt their policies. I am seriously concerned here tonight that the rapport, the mutual respect and the special relationship that normally exists between the Garda force and the government of the day is under such great strain. I would urge the Minister to do everything he possibly can in his own personal capacity to try and restore and rebuild that relationship. I am in favour of smart policing. I'm fully in favour of reform and changes and more effective ways of doing things. I know that the pulse system is often referred to as one of the important resources in relation to these changes within policing and modern policing. The pulse system, Cathaoirleach, that I rely on is the finger on the pulse around the towns and villages and communities throughout the country, and indeed listening to the members of An Garda Síochána themselves. I note with some disquiet that I understand that last night at a meeting of Cork GRA, over 350 officers attended and unanimously voted to take what is effectively strike action. This would be very serious, and I think this does reflect the low level of morale that is now in the force. It would be tantamount to effectively the Garda force today almost mutiny, and I would implore the GRA and the AGSI to step back from that kind of action. But I think it's a two-way street, and I also ask the Minister to meet the GRA and the AGSI halfway, because this is not just about Garda stations. It's not as simplistic as that, and that's not our point, and that's not our case. It's about Garda resources, Garda patrols, Garda visibility, and local knowledge. And in fact, throughout November, I repeatedly raised the issue of a town the size of Mount Mellick, where there have been serious incidents in broad daylight where the citizens are afraid to traverse the main street and go about their business. And in fact, I couldn't have conjured it up in my own local paper here, which was just published yesterday, the Leinster Express. The main headline is "Sledgehammer Attack on Lone Garda in Mount Mellick in the early hours of Monday morning." And that's the kind of challenge and the kind of problems that Garda are facing. And I also want to sort of refer to the point that Senator Dennis Landy made. I think it's a good point, and I think it needs to be considered, that it's unfortunate that we proceeded with the closure of the Garda stations prior to the rollout and deployment of the new Garda vehicles that the Minister, to be fair, very wisely made the resources available for. My understanding was that for last year there were 212 new vehicles, patrol vehicles purchased, and that they were to be deployed throughout December and January. But I myself have not seen them in the Garda division of Laois Offaly or indeed throughout other parts of the country. And I think that was a mistake in terms of the strategy. People would have felt more reassured and more heartened had they seen those vehicles on the beat and on the street prior to the closure of the Garda stations. Minister, the Gardaí are law-abiding people. They're not militant. They are supporters of the state and of the government. But I do believe that they do think at the moment that their pay and basic working conditions are under attack. Serving members of the Gardaí have informed me that even those with up to 20 years service are now living on credit and relying on credit to get by. They inform me that since 2007 they've taken a 26% cut in their effective pay. There are Garda families, Minister, applying for and receiving family income supplement, and now more pay cuts are proposed. I don't think, as Minister for Justice, you would like to see that any serving member of the Garda would be reduced to that in what was traditionally regarded as a good job and a well-paid job. We must do everything, Minister, to regain the trust of the Gardaí as a government and to retain their expertise and vast experience. I too am a supporter and an advocate of the community alert system. In fact, I'm involved in terms of locally within my own community in the rural area in Timahoe and Rathneska in such a scheme, which indeed was established and set up with the assistance of a retired superintendent through Meter Natira. But we need more deterrence than just text alerts throughout the countryside to deter unscrupulous criminals. We need highly motivated Gardaí on the beat with modern patrol cars with a response time that can reassure people that they're not isolated or being left alone. And I have to say, that, beg your pardon?
Half a minute.
Thank you very much, Carla. I have to say that we have to be careful how we use statistics. You can apply statistics in all sorts of ways, and I don't think that the statistics that we are using necessarily are borne out with the reality on the ground. And finally, Minister, I'm glad to hear you referencing that the Garda buildings that are now being vacated can be put to such positive community use. I think this is important. I want to echo and support the views of Dublin City Councillor Mannix Flynn, who points out that these buildings are in important locations and form an important part of our heritage and tradition and policing history up and down the length and breadth of the country. And it would be a disaster if they were to fall into disrepair or to be vandalised or to be pilfered. So I would encourage the Minister to ensure that they are put to good use and that they are retained and maintained and managed, and that they're not allowed to decay and to be lost to the community. But finally, Minister, I do urge you, notwithstanding the challenges that you are faced on the budgetary level, to try and re-engage with the Garda Representative Association and the AGSI to get them back to the table and to start with a clean sheet. And I urge them also to meet you halfway in that regard.
Thank you, Senator Whelan.
Thank you very much, Cahir.
Thank you.